Hey everybody, this is Jared from Intricity. I'll be moderating today's call around replicating Salesforce data. We're excited because we have Glenn Hillam on the line with us. Glenn's background spans, well, he got started really young in the IT space, so he spends almost to the day about 30 years in data management and data integration. So he brings a wealth of knowledge from that space. He's held CIO titles, and as well as business-centric titles, which gives them the ability to kind of dive deep in the weeds, very deep in the weeds, in fact, as well as come up for air and work with the business. And we wanted to share a recent success that Glenn has enabled at one of his customers, and have him share how this could potentially work for you if you're a Salesforce customer. So Glenn, why don't you go ahead and take the floor?
All right. Well, thank you, Jared. And hopefully everyone can hear me clearly. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about something that just amazed me. And it's one of these things that's always been complicated. I'm not sure if everybody's seeing my screen. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Jared. I love technology. And I used to always be told by an old guy I used to work with when I was much younger, and he used to always tell me, easy doesn't have to be hard. And he would remind me that when I would create something or build something that was overly complicated, overly challenging to use. And I remember there's been products that have come out on the market that have just really amazed us and have made things easy. And I remember when the Palm Pilot came out, and this is many years ago, and I loved the Palm Pilot. It was so innovative, and it changed the way I did things, except for one thing. The thing that used to drive me crazy was how hard it was to add an application. I remember the first one I added. I was up for 3 or 4 hours all night long trying to get everything synced up, to download the app, to unzip it, to sync it back, and then have it load, and it would fail. And I thought, wow, this is way too complicated. But a few years later, a company out of Cupertino came along, and they made the App Store. And today we don't think 2 seconds about how easy it is to add an application to our mobile device. It's so commonplace. What Europe can be at a party, and somebody says, "Hey, have you seen the new app?" And they tell you about it, and you open the App Store, you go get it, you download it. It's that easy. Again, easy doesn't have to be hard. It also reminds me when I was a kid. We as a family, we loved popcorn. But my mother used to always complain about how messy it was. Now, this is back in the 70s, early 70s, because we had to pop it in a pan, and it made a mess. And it wasn't that it was hard. It was just a pain. It was awful. And today, we've got microwave popcorn. And so throughout my years, especially in the last years, I tell people when we're designing things and building things, I said, we need to make microwave popcorn simple. Because when we talk about solutions and we talk about technology, they should be easy. They should be able to be point and click and be done. And so I just tell people, hey, we need to make microwave popcorn solutions. And so when we think about other products, there's another one that comes to mind. And this is one that has won lots of awards, and I'm just amazed at how big it's become, and that is Salesforce.com. In the earlier days, everybody had their Salesforce automation tool on-premise, and then along came this company, Salesforce, and they said, we're going to do it in the cloud. And, they have become the gold standard of cloud-based applications. And whenever we start talking about cloud, we always refer to Salesforce.com. And they are an amazing tool. But one of the biggest challenges that I've had with Salesforce as one that works with data integration was getting data from the cloud down to the organization on-premise so they can use it for many things, like operational reporting and process integration, data warehouse projects, the list goes on. And I can tell you that every time I sat with a client, and we'd be talking about, designing a data warehouse or doing application integration, and when they would throw out, hey, we use Salesforce.com, and we'd like to integrate that data with it, it was like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. because I thought, oh, this is the part that becomes the nightmare, is getting that data from Salesforce down to on-premise and doing it easily. And, we would go and we would build, ETL to build that. We would sit down, we would scope out the schemas, what does this need to look like, do all this work. And here's the scenario that would typically happen. We'd get it all built, and we'd be working, it'd be functioning great, and then we'd get a scenario just like this. And I'm sure those who are on the call that work with Salesforce are very similar, are very sympathetic and know this conversation. It goes something like this. Hey, we want to add a sales campaign, and we'd like to have a checkbox added to the account object in Salesforce. And because that's part of our sales campaign, we need to have that now be part of our reporting system. And so we need you to now change your replication process and add in this new column. And, oh, by the way, we'll probably change our mind 4 or 5 times over the next 2 or 3 months, and we're going to be adding columns and taking them off. And so this became an absolute headache for me. This was one of the number one reasons why every time I would talk to a client about Salesforce and about replicating that data, it was a nightmare. And then I was in California earlier last year, I guess it was 2013, and I was doing an executive briefing about data warehousing with a client. And we were talking about the benefits and beauty of data warehousing, and they had brought to my attention that they use Salesforce quite heavily and wanted to integrate Salesforce into the data warehouse and their downstream business intelligence applications. And we were talking about Salesforce, and in the back of my mind I'm thinking, oh, this is the part that I hate, and kind of dreading the whole replication and all of that work. And one of the people attending the briefing said, we thought about using this product from Informatica, it's their cloud product, Informatica Cloud, to do the Salesforce replication. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, that's an option. And they said, yeah, it's supposed to be really easy. And first thing in my mind, I thought, vendor stories. I've never seen easy when it comes to replication, and I just couldn't believe it. And I actually ended that meeting, and I actually made a call to Jared, who's our Informatica specialist, and I said, tell me what you think about the cloud solution for Informatica, and especially about replication from Salesforce. And we talked a little bit about it, and he kind of talked to me about, some of the highlights of it, and that got me digging into it. So I started doing a little research around it. And interesting enough, a few weeks later, a different client, completely different, asked us to come in and do some integration work. And part of that integration work was to use Informatica Cloud services to do Salesforce replication. So I was actually kind of, for the first time, excited to do Salesforce replication. Now, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, so I read up on all the technical documents and reviewed them thoroughly. And I went on site, and the first day I thought, this typical project, it's going to last, a while. And while I was sitting with a person explaining what it was that they wanted, they reminded me that part of what their solution needed to do was not only do the replication of what's in Salesforce, but also deal in a more automated fashion the changes that they would make on a periodic basis with additions to Salesforce and adding columns, removing columns, and all of that. And I thought, oh, wow, I don't know if this is going to be able to do it. And so, we sat down, and this is the honest truth. The first day we were there, we sat down, we got the back end working, which is called the secure agent, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And they had given us a list of all of the objects in Salesforce that they wanted replicated. And they got us, IDs and passwords to get on to both Informatica Cloud as well as Salesforce. By the end of the day, we had everything that we had listed not only replicated, but in an automated fashion to replicate incrementally every day. Now, I'm going to repeat that one more time. In a span of one day, we took what I would have normally thought of as a project that could be weeks, months maybe, depending on how detailed it could be, and we had that functioning with its initial replication and validation in the first day. And I was so impressed. I remember calling a few people and saying, I have found the new microwave popcorn for me. And it is Informatica Cloud Services doing data replication from Salesforce. Now, let me talk a little bit about how it works, because I'm sure those on the call are probably like me from Missouri, and I actually am from Missouri, that say, I would have to kind of see this to believe it. Really? That easy? In one day you had it working? I would be skeptical. Well, let me tell you how it works and tell you kind of what we did, and then kind of some of the best practices that we used and we've learned and used and deploy now. So the way Informatica Cloud works, and we shorten it and we call it ICS for short, but basically it works on this premise. You log into Informatica Cloud, which is truly a cloud-based application, and it then connects to a server which you have on-premise called the Secure Agent. Now, the Secure Agent, if there's any part of this solution, which if you want to get it up and running quick and be done, this is where there's value to bring in an expert in configuring this, because there is a little complexity here. But this is the part that once it's set up, it is magic. And so you've set your Secure Agent up. It's what deals with your security between Informatica Cloud, your security to your different web-based applications like Salesforce, and it's also where a lot of the processing happens. And then you create, as part of your Secure Agent, you create your connections both coming from your cloud data as well as your connections going to your different data sources like SQL Server or Oracle. And then you're ready to replicate. And I'm going to go through a couple screenshots here, and we actually just changed these up just so that we can show the brand new interface that came out over this weekend. So this is the new and improved look and feel of Informatica Cloud. And I want to go through how easy it really is to do replication. And literally it's 1, 2, 3 and a half, go, you're done. So first off, we identify where's it going to come from. What's the source? And when we talked about connections, we've already defined, and this is part of setting up the Secure Agent, is we've defined our different connections. And in there, we've chosen what source, and in this case, we're pointing to Salesforce in the cloud in our development environment. And we give the task a name and a description, and then we choose, are we going to replicate everything, or are we going to selectively replicate? And you click this, and you're going to get this menu which lists every object that you have available to you in your Salesforce environment. And literally, you go simply through those, you check off the ones you want, and once you've checked them off, you'll see that those are the ones that are going to be replicated. Not only can you just do general replication, but you can also, if you choose to, replicate fields that or columns that have been or rows that have been deleted, as well as the identifiers telling that it is deleted, and a number of other things. And then once you've picked your source, then we go on to targets. And in your target, basically all you're telling it is where is it going to go. Now here's the part that just blew my mind, because normally when we do replication, we've got to sit down, we've got to plan out the schemas, we've got to script it, we've got to do a lot of work about where is it going to, what do I need to configure it. For Informatica Cloud data replication, the only thing, and I'll give you the example of going to a SQL Server, the only thing that I needed to do in SQL Server, and this is the only thing in my initial piece, is I needed to have created just the database, no tables, no anything, just the database of where it was going to go and make sure that my connector pointed to it. And everything after that, all the schemas, all the structures, everything is automatic. So I pick where it's going to go to. And then one of the things here, before you move on, Jared, one of the things that is great about this tool, and this is why it's become a new tool of choice to do so many things, is not only will it replicate down and give it the exact name of the object as it comes from in the cloud, but they have this option which you see here on my screen called Target Prefix. Well, what this allows us to do as part of our replication is if we wanted to replicate a different set of data, but we didn't want to disturb our existing sets, we can add any prefix we want to the beginning of that table or that object that's going to come down from the cloud and be pushed into our database. And so when you start thinking about this and the ability to use this, all of a sudden you've got tons of solutions that you can use because we can create a test prefix. And maybe we want to test a number of objects coming down. Or maybe I have to do a vendor extract to provide some data to a vendor. So I put the name of the vendor in front of it. Any prefix you want to use, you can do that. Or if you leave it with no prefix, it'll be the exact name that is in the cloud. Then the other big options here, which is really important, is you identify whether you're going to incrementally load or you're going to do a full load. So in the case of incremental loads, every time it processes, it's going to go and simply update the rows or insert the rows that are new or changed. And so your time to replicate is very short after you've done the initial replication. However, you also have the opportunity to do full load. And you can choose that so that perhaps you've got a table that for the nature of it, you want to load it fully every single time. You can choose that as well. And it knows, and it's smart enough to know that if the table is not there, or if we made a significant change to the table structure in the cloud, that it will do a full load versus an incremental. Otherwise, every time it runs, it will incrementally load. Just like in the other part of this, it makes deleting and managing deleted rows really simple. It's a checkbox. It's a radio button there. And it's that simple. Now, those are probably the two biggest steps you have. Step 1, source. Step 2, target. Where's it going to go? And then the next 3, 4, and 5 are kind of choices that you make. So in the field exclusions, you can choose if there are certain fields in your tables or in your objects that you don't want to be present. And you can get very granular if you want to. And remember, you can make many different types of replications. So if we take the example of replicating the account table from Salesforce, I can have many iterations of that account table being replicated many different ways based on what my needs are. And it's through this very simple interface that we do that. All right, then we go on to data filters. Again, this is very powerful. Normally, if we're just doing full replication, we let it process all of them. But we can get very granular here. So if you think about it, if you're trying to stage data, or you're trying to look at a data set after a certain date, or that has a certain element in the data set that you're interested in, you can get very granular with the filter sets. And the beautiful thing is you could run that replication one time, or you could have that replication run every day for the next forever. And so there's just a lot of power in how this works, and it's very simple. And then we go on to the last one, schedule. Now, schedule, there's a couple things to it. It's really schedule and alert. And so I'm going to go into the alert part first, and then I'm going to come back to schedule. So if you'll notice down below in the middle section there, you've got a number of options. You can have it alert you when it's successful. You can have it alert you when there's a warning. You can have it alert you also when there's a failure. Or you can have all three. Now, this is extremely powerful because this now gives us a mechanism by which we can not only monitor it as far as its activity, but just be aware and alerted to when things either happen or don't happen. And I'll give you an example of what this looks like in just a minute. But it's so easy. Then we set the schedule. Now, one of the nice things that Informatica Cloud does do is it allows us to create schedules that we can use over and over and over again. And what that allows us to do, and so if you look here on your presentation here, I actually used one that we run every day in the morning. And so I added this replication set to that one that would run every day in the morning. And so every task that I apply to that, when that schedule kicks off, it's going to run all the tasks associated with it. And so that makes it also extremely powerful in the way that it processes and schedules things. And then last off is really simple. We simply, after we've kind of set the schedule it's going to run onto, how it's going to alert us, all we do is we go to the top and we say, save it and run it now. And from there, it will, if we tell it to save and run now, it'll immediately kick off the entire task, whether it's going to replicate one table or an entire system, and it's going to take us to the monitoring window. And in the monitoring window, we can see it either in real detail or all flattened up. And in this screenshot I grabbed here, you can see that it'll actually show you the rows coming in. So you can actually watch its progress and get a sense of how far along it is in its replication. Now, the other nice thing is it can replicate both in parallel as well as in serial. In the case of the task that we simply just created right here, it would replicate this in a serial fashion. So it would replicate the account table first, and then the account history, and then the account share. However, if I wanted to have this replicate even faster and replicate in parallel, by simply creating each process that I want to have run as a separate task versus combining them as a single task, and then putting them to the same schedule, they will actually run in parallel. So there's a number of options that you can do to make this very simple. And at the end, when it's done replicating, you're done. And you'll get an email that looks something like this. This happens to be a different email, but it's one that I had. And you're going to get an email that looks like, here's the task that ran, here's the details, when it ran, how many rows or records got updated, if there was any failures, how many failed. And it's very detailed, and you'll get that every time that you tell it to send it to you. And so it couldn't be easier. And this is somebody that used to absolutely hate doing replication work. Today, at the client that we've implemented this at, replication has gone from being a curse word to actually something that is the hottest topic around. We've now, because we've made using Informatica Cloud replication so easy, we are now finding new and many alternative ways to leverage replication from the data that's in the cloud to do all kinds of things. Things like testing. The development team that works on Salesforce has realized it's easier to test many of their changes in the results that come down in SQL than it is trying to do it in Salesforce. Likewise, as we have different vendor feeds that needed to be pulled down and provided to vendors for other processes, we found it really easy to create replications using filters to pull out those data sets. Likewise, for building a data warehouse, we use this to replicate all the core data that we need to feed our data warehouse. And all of these, we use scheduling to deliver it all, and it couldn't be easier. And every day when you come in and you want to see how things are, you log in. The very first page you see is this monitoring page, which shows you everything that has ran in the last little bit. And you can filter through it, you can sort through it, you can dig in and see how many rows were returned, and if you want to just simply restart it. Perhaps something was wrong, or you just want to refresh it. By simply hitting the refresh button there, that will actually restart that job and run it right now. Like I mentioned before, this is as easy as microwave popcorn. We've taken what used to be a potentially complex, time-consuming, highly maintenance required process and made it as simple as microwave popcorn. And I'm telling you, from one that has done lots of data integration and that is not easily impressed, I was highly impressed by how easy, how effective, and how reliable Informatica Cloud was for doing data replication for Salesforce and, for that fact, many of the other cloud-based solutions. Now, just so nobody gets confused, I've only touched on one piece and one component of Informatica Cloud's solution set. And there are many others, and I would recommend you taking a chance to go and take a look at that. You can go online and get more details about it. But truly, if you have Salesforce and you have a need to get data from the cloud down to on-premise and be able to use that, there is no easier tool nor reliable than what I've seen in my uses of Informatica Cloud. I thank everybody for the opportunity to share what I've found, which I think is great. And I'm going to turn the time back over to Jared, and he can talk a little bit more if you're interested or would like to look at professional services around setting it up. He can give you those details.
Yes, so folks, I have my email address listed here. You can certainly email me or call me, and we can help you get up to speed on the Informatica Cloud platform, as well as setting up the secure agent at your premise. So thanks again for attending today's webinar. And if there is any questions, go ahead and send me an email at the email listed below, jhillam@intricity.com. Thanks so much.